Thank you for tuning in and checking out Unlucky, a memoir. My name is Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. And after this episode for some bonus footage from a speaking engagement I had the other night with a bunch of donors for the Denver Rescue Mission. I'm going to include it right after the normal episode. Thanks. So where I left off last week, I was just charged with 20 and a half grams of heroin. And as we're sitting in the police station, I remember getting the officer coming in and kind of smirking and laughing. And here he went to academy with the on-duty officer in Northampton County, who he called because he found a probation card in my stuff. Like, what are the chances, right? But, so from there we get taken over to Sussex, which is Delaware State Prison, and checked in. And that's where I was trying to be slick and quick, and they make it, strip down, take a shower, before you get intaked into the prison. And I was trying to get out of the shower and get back into my sneakers really fast because I still had dope stuffed under the soles of the shoes. Luckily for me, the officer on at the time, and I still remember his name, I'm not going to put him out there because he ended up being the officer in my tier for most of my stay down there. He got there right before I stepped into him, picked him up, pulled the soles, knocked him, and goes, he thought it was LSD, and he just threw it away, which is nice because I didn't get charged with that. I mean, that would have been the only real heroin I had on me at the time. Everything else was just residue and baggies. So I get taken to the intake pod after I'm checked in. It's a pretty small concrete cell, and over the next 3 or 4 days that I sat in intake, I went through a pretty severe detox. At the time, I was using an enormous amount of heroin every day. I was spending well over $1,000 a day on my addiction. I would get a brick, which at the time was 13 bags in a bundle and 10 bundles. So it's 130 bags a day. And each bag at that point in time was 1/10 of a gram. So it's like 13 grams of heroin every day. And I would inject 13 of those every time. I'd inject 13 bags every time I got high. Amazingly enough, it was one of the easiest detoxes I ever went through. I think it was because I had no choice. I'm in a foreign place. I'm in a prison where I have no connections. So I just kind of sucked it up and went through it. I remember going out because they served the chow right on the tier right there on the intake pod. I'd go out and I wouldn't eat. I'd get a cup of juice, pound that, fill it back up because it's super sweet. And then I'd go back into my cell and crawl back onto my bunk and just try to sleep as much as I could, and then just keep pounding water and juice the whole time. And it actually wasn't, it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as it could be. The difference is, if you try to detox yourself on the street, at a moment's notice you can make a phone call and probably have dope at your door or go get some. It's always available. So when you cut off the availability, it kind of puts your mind at ease a little bit more, at least for me. So I proceed to detox, end up getting taken to the main part of the prison. And I remember I still remember a few of the people I was in there with that I kind of kept in contact with for a while. But I remember the one, he was there because he got arrested by the Dover Downs horse racing track back then, off-track betting, horse racing, whatever. And he was in the back seat, and the cop was outside of the car. He shimmied his cuffs in front of him, climbed through the center window that was left open in the cruiser, and stole the cop car. There was quite a cast of characters down there, but I ended up staying there for approximately 4 months. I remember being in contact with my father the whole time, and at this point in my life, he still had my back with pretty much everything, as a lot of my family did. So I remember him always saying, if something happens and you get released, just keep walking, walk as far as you can, make a phone call, get a hold of me, I'll come pick you up. You know, because he was scared that I would end up in there, and his biggest fear was I would be incarcerated, something would happen, and it would turn into a much longer sentence because of charges from prison. So I did 4 months down there. I remember going to court and getting probation, right? So I don't know what's happened because I could get released. I don't know. I know I had warrants out of Pennsylvania, out of 2 counties, but you never know. Things happen. So finally they call me to pack it up, and I get out front, and there's 2 Lehigh County sheriffs sitting there waiting for me. So I guess I wasn't getting out that day. I got into their squad, their car, and was transported from South Delaware up to Lehigh County in Pennsylvania, near Allentown. Get intaked at the Lehigh County Correctional Facility, go up to my cell, and again, I meet some characters there, and the weird thing was there was this kid, Danny, and we would swap out sneakers so he could play handball, because I had a really nice set of sneakers at the time, and his were pretty beat up. He had a pair of slip-on Merrells, and it's ironic because he took those from who would become my roommate and friend later on down the road. It's a weird twist, but I did approximately another 4 months in Lehigh County, and I would sit there, and I got somebody who was leaving sold me their TV pretty cheap, so the whole time I was there, at least I had something to watch. I was drawing envelopes and stuff, selling them. But I remember going to court. I think it might have been video court at Lehigh County, and I was, because this was on a probation violation. Amazingly enough, they returned me to probation, didn't take any of my street time away, and let me just continue on, almost as if nothing had happened other than me being incarcerated for 4 months. So, again, not really sure what's going to happen here, but I get called downstairs, pack it up and discharge. Go downstairs, and now there's 2 Northampton County sheriffs waiting for me. So I end up at Northampton County Prison, and this is when I meet my new probation parole agent, a guy named Frank. And ironically, I don't know if I brought this up before, but he ended up being a really good guy who I had remained in contact with over the years. And he had tried to look out for me as best he could. once he was no longer my agent. And he had a pretty traumatic childhood where his father was an adulterer and his mother decided that she did not want a divorce, so the only way out of this was to kill him. And she tried repeatedly, many different ways. Ironically, one of the ways ended up saving his life from the other way that they tried to kill him. And this got turned into a Hollywood movie. But regardless, I think there was empathy there from coming from a background that was a little chaotic. And he had compassion. He wasn't there just to inflict his will on you. He wanted to help you become a better person. He was a good guy. Still is. So I ended up spending another 4 months incarcerated in Northampton County Prison before he agrees to kick me loose back onto parole. Not take my street time. So this hiccup, which turned into being a year of incarceration at this point, was just that, a hiccup. When I left, I got called for discharge, pack up, and I get downstairs thinking, I think I'm good. And then I found out there's 2 sheriffs from Snow Hill, Maryland, there waiting for me. So I was in Delaware, which is quite a bit south of Lehigh County, come up to Lehigh County, and head directly over to Northampton County, which is next door, so that wasn't far. But now they're taking me south again, which is probably an hour or so west of Ocean City, Maryland. So I get into the cruiser with these 2 sheriffs, which they were pretty good guys, joking, and I remember making fun of somebody with a Pennsylvania tag and a rebel flag license plate on their motorcycle. And they were giggling because, oh, look, check it out, a Yankee Rebel. But we get down to Snow Hill, Maryland, and in Snow Hill, the lower level judges are called commissioners. They were in Pennsylvania, they were magistrates. Well, I go into the commissioner's office, and it's a small, modest office. Sit across to him at his desk wearing gray sweats, gray sweatshirt, white t-shirt. This is prison gear. That's all I had at this point. So I sit there, and he goes, I can't believe that they brought you all the way down here on this charge. He goes, ROR, you can go. So I get up and I try to leave the office as quickly as possible because I don't want him to change his mind. Well, I get to the door as I'm ready to go outside. He says, hey, wait. Come back here for a second. And I walk back, and he goes, do you have any... Or he goes, would you like my officer here to give you a ride out to Ocean City? It may be easier to get a bus or a ride home. I said, sure. Again, I just want to get out of his office before he changes his mind. Well, I start walking to the door again. He calls me back one more time. And I'm like, yes. And he goes, do you have any money on you? And I said, I have a check for $12 from Northampton County Prison that they issued me when I was released. He goes, where are you going? He goes, you don't have any money. What's the point of taking you there if you can't get anywhere? And at this point, I started thinking, oh, he's going to lock me up until I can figure out a way home. He's going to have me incarcerated until I can safely get transported back home. And I was like, man. And he goes, do you have anybody you can call? And I said, yeah, I can call my dad. It was Friday. It was, so we call my father. I get on with him, and we start talking for a minute. And I explained to him that I need to get home from Maryland. And he tells me, he goes, well, I can't do it right now. I have a meeting I have to go to tonight. So it's impossible for me to get down there and get you. I have a prior commitment. And I'm just like, next thing you know, before my dad and I can start figuring out an alternative, the commissioner goes, give me the phone. He takes the phone, and they talk for a couple minutes, back and forth. I can't really tell what's being said or what's going on. And then the commissioner just hangs the phone up. You didn't hand it back to me, which I would expect, so I could talk to my father and figure out exactly what's going to happen. So the commissioner says, your dad sounds like a good guy. He sounds like an honest man. So what I'm going to do is I have friends up the street. They own a bed and breakfast. I'm going to put you up there for the night, and your father's going to come down in the morning and pay for it. And I just asked, don't bother any of the other guests. Stay out of the way. And I'll give you a ride up there. I remember walking out of the office with him, like, in a moment of disbelief, because I just spent a year incarcerated, and now I'm going to spend the first night out of prison in a bed and breakfast in Snow Hill, Maryland. Well, we get in his car, and I see he's smoking Parliaments, and I ask him if I can bum one, because I haven't really had a real cigarette in a while, and he gave me one. And we drive up there. He checks me in. It's this little attic room in this house. It's a bed and breakfast. And he goes, yeah, just, kind of stay to yourself. And it's, there's no TV. There's no nothing. So I'm just kind of like not sure what to do. I go down. There's a nice little courtyard out back. And I start sifting through the butt can trying to find something because I just want to smoke cigarettes. And I decide I'm going to go for a walk. It's brisk. It's September. I think it's like September 7th or 8th, whatever. It's still nice out, but it's a little chilly. And I'm walking through Snow Hill, Maryland. It's a little Main Street type town. Really nice town. And it starts raining, but that didn't deter me at all. I wanted to just keep walking because it was such an odd feeling of not being incarcerated for the first time in a year that it didn't bother me. I just kept walking. So I would go back, finally, go upstairs, fall asleep. And I'm really used to waking up early from being incarcerated for a year. So I go downstairs, and there's like a little eating area and a little bar. And as I get downstairs, I'm looking to see if anybody's around. It's really early. I come around the corner, and there's this commissioner sitting at the bar drinking screwdrivers and smoking Parliaments at 6, 7 in the morning, whatever it was. And I remember sitting down next to him and looking at him drinking, and I was very tempted to ask him for a drink. I did not, but I did ask him for a cigarette and a coffee. So we sat there joking for a little bit, and before you knew it, my dad must have got up really early and came down because he walked in, took care of the tab. I remember getting in his car, and we stopped at the gas station so I could get some cigarettes, and then we stopped at Denny's, I think, and got some food, and then headed north back to Easton, where he dropped me off at my grandmother's house. And that weekend, I got in contact with a lot of people who know us back around, and one of my really good friends who I ended up being the best man at this wedding, and another friend of mine who I hung out with since I had the tattoo shop in '97. And we go to my buddy's house, and they have a little welcome home party for me, and I have a couple drinks with them, hang out, and then they give me a ride back to my grandparents' house, and I go to sleep on the couch. And here's the irony of telling this story right now. I remember my grandmother waking me up on the couch saying, honey, something's going on. A plane just hit the World Trade Center. And I'm waking up, and at this point, nobody knew what was happening other than a plane somehow flew into the World Trade Center. And I remember kind of waking up and wiping the sleep out of my eyes, and when everything finally kind of came clear is when the second plane hit the tower, the second tower. I remember picking up the phone and calling my buddy whose house I was at the night before, and it's this weird no, remembering all these details, right? I go, what are you doing? He goes, we're watching 28 Days, which is a Sandra Bullock rehab movie. And I said, turn the channel. He goes, to what? I go, just turn the channel. Because at that point it was on every station other than like cable stations like HBO or whatever they were watching. He turned the station and the phone went silent for the next 30 minutes or so. And not a word was spoken. We just sat there in silence on the phone. And then the second tower to be hit collapsed. And that's when we finally broke our silence and just realized that everything was going to be different. Like it was such a crazy moment. It's hard to put into words and explain, but in recording this, it's September 11th. It's a weird feeling. Yeah. So that's the end of that part of my journey. I appreciate all of you for coming along on this journey with me and tuning in every week. I'm honored to have people interested in what I'm saying. I was honored to be asked to speak for the Denver Rescue Mission and share my experience and strength and hope and my story to their donors and be able to touch the hearts of some people and maybe help lessen a little bit of that stigma that comes along with addiction and let people know that we do recover. We are redeemable and we can be redeemed. Please like, share, follow, all that YouTube stuff. And with that, I'll see you all next week. Thank you. All right, first I'd like to thank every one of you for making opportunities like this possible for people like me. I've been in this state for about 18 months. First and foremost, I'm only here by the grace of God. Today, I was just telling somebody earlier that the life that I have today wasn't even a speck on the horizon 2 years ago. I couldn't imagine the life that I lead today. I currently am a peer support specialist with a recovery organization, and with another recovery organization, I'm the housing manager for a PHP program. I'm only here because someone helped me, so hopefully I can help someone else. With that being said, I'm originally from right outside of Philadelphia in a place called the Lehigh Valley, east in Bethlehem and Allentown. For 30 plus years of my life, I was an IV opiate drug user. So what I'm going to do now is introduce you to the mess, so maybe the message will mean a little bit more. I spent my whole adult life in and out of addiction. And finally, I decided I needed to get out of my own way. Back east, I got myself to a point, a bottom that I'd never hit before. I found myself unhoused. Originally, I was living out of a small pickup truck that I had that was impounded. So now I'm completely unhoused, surfing couches here and there. I found someone that would rent me a storage room in the basement of an apartment building. There was no facilities in that room. There was a hose spigot on the wall and a drain outside. It was 5.5 cinder blocks wide by about 15 long. And I existed in that basement. I didn't live, I existed there. I got to this point of absolute hopelessness where there was no tomorrow because it was going to be the same exact thing it was today. I was going to wake up, I was going to go out and panhandle, get enough money to get drugs and make sure I could pay the rent on that little storage room, do drugs, nod off, fall asleep, wake up and do it all again. That's absolute hopelessness. A lot of people use that word loosely. They go, it's a hopeless situation. No, I felt absolute hopelessness. I found myself
on a daily basis, praying to a God at the time I did not believe in to let me die every day. I would sit there on my bed and look and just say, let me go. Just let me die. Because I was too scared to take my own life for fear of going to a hell that I probably shouldn't have believed in, considering I didn't really believe in God. So along that way, I met a gentleman out panhandling that pulled over and came to talk to me. And I figured he was just going to tell me to get a job. But instead, he said, can I pray with you? His name turned out to be Brother Ron, or Philly Ron. And I said, of course you can pray with me. Because in my mind, he was going to give me some money after he prayed with me. It wasn't because I wanted to know more about God or be prayed for. And he would come by regularly. And he didn't judge. He didn't condemn. He showed me love and kindness. And I remember one day, a buddy of mine was with me, and Ron was there helping us out with some money. And my friend said, Ron, why do you do this? I'm not upset that you're doing it, but why do you give us money? And I was born and raised Roman Catholic, so I still remember some scripture. I said, for it is easier for a camel to pass the eye of a needle than a wealthy man to enter the kingdom of God. And he looked at me like he was surprised. And so I saw the look in his eyes. So I'm like, oh, he's going to give me more money. So I started reading some scripture so I could remember things. And I used to watch a YouTube channel. I still watch it. It's called Bikes and Beards. The guy's a Christian, and he puts a Bible verse up every video. And what has since become my verse, and it's on my ring, he posted Joshua 1:9. Be strong, be courageous, do not be fearful, do not be dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with you always. And I said, I like that. I wrote it down and memorized it. Next time he pulled up, I went to his car and I go, Ron, do you know Joshua 1:9? And he kind of smirked and said, tell me. So I quoted it to him. He proceeded to roll up his right sleeve. It was tattooed on his forearm. And at the time, I could look at it as coincidence, but now I know better. That was the Spirit nudging me in the direction I needed to go. So some might say he tricked me into starting to read scripture and stuff by paying me. But that was the start of my journey. And then I woke up in that basement one day and I realized I was going to die. Nobody would ever remember me for the good things I did in my life. If they remembered me at all, it was going to be as a worthless junkie who threw his life away. And that scared me. And I used to be really scared to tell that part of my story because it's shallow. I wasn't worried about my family or anybody else. It was about how I was going to be remembered. But the amazing thing is I realized God let me hold on to my pride and ego just long enough to save my life. So I knew something had to change. I knew I was going to die back on the East Coast. I have a half brother in Arvada. So I decided, go to Denver. At worst, it's a lateral shift. I come here and I die anyway. But maybe there's a chance, right? I get here in March of 24, March 2nd, Saturday, get off that bus. I made some plans that I was going to take some action and do some things when I got here. And there's that old adage, make plans and God laughs. Well, my plans didn't pan out the way I thought. Got in a big argument with my brother who had no idea I was coming to Colorado. Angrily asked him to be my emergency contact because I told him I was going to go check myself into a psych hold at the hospital. I went, and the hospital told me after I was admitted, you're not suicidal. You're a homeless drug addict that wants a warm place to stay. And that's the biggest concern, is stigma that comes with addiction. They threw me out in the morning. I left there going, I'm going to show her I'm suicidal. Because I told her I have $200 in cash in my pocket, $100 on a credit card, and two $25 Visa gift cards. My plan was to walk out of that hospital, go find the people I saw getting high the night before, get as much as I could, and take my life. I remember walking down Broadway, and I said, I think this is the worst mistake I've ever made. At least back on the East Coast, I would have died inside. So I had made my mind up, finally, this is what I was going to do. I kept walking, and I must have been walking a while. My phone goes off. It's a text from my brother who says, the hospital just called and said they threw you out. Do me a favor and go check in at the free clinic down on Stout Street. This was a turning point where I was looking at my phone, wanting to end my life. I looked up from that phone and I was standing on Stout and Broadway, a block and a half from that clinic. And that I remember looking, I physically remember looking up and going, all right, I get it, God. I get it. Like, it's not my time. I walked to that clinic, went to go inside after an hour or so when they finally opened. And I was asked if I was a client. I was not. And they said, we are not accepting new clients. But God put a person at that door, because it could have been anybody at that door. But this person followed up with another question. Because what is the problem? What's going on? And other people might be fed up with dealing with unhoused, addicted people. But she was kind. And when I explained the night before, she said, oh, it's a psych? We'll get you right in. And I still have that same therapist they hooked me up with. But in the process, I ended up at Jesus Saves on Lawrence Street. Through that process, I ended up at the men's shelter. And while I was at the men's shelter, the chaplain over there kept telling me to come to this program. And I said, be happy I'm coming to your Bible study. I'm not going anywhere for a year. And then I applied for housing, and they told me that's going to be at least 12 months. And I said, wait, this is a 12-month program over here? So I decided, okay, I applied. And I remember when I got accepted, I was on the phone with a friend of mine from St. Louis, a friend from third grade who's still in my life. And I remember telling him on the phone, I go, I think this is the best decision I've ever made. So within 30 days, I went from the worst decision to the best decision. But if I would have acted on the emotion that day, there's no chance of being redeemed. There's no chance of it getting better. So thankfully, God intervened and decided there was something else I needed to do in my life. So I got accepted to this program, came to this program, and I remember the first town hall meeting I had here as a participant. And I believe it was Chaplain Mark. He addressed everybody and told us how lucky we are, because some of the opportunities and classes we have here cost X amount of dollars. And I remember thinking to myself, I want that. I don't know what it is, but I want it. And I tell everybody, you have a spare tire in your car for a reason, right? You hope you never need it, but it's there in case you do. I took advantage of every opportunity this place provided. And again, I thank you all for making opportunities like this available to someone like me. This place is a key part in what saved my life and allowed me to be redeemed. I owe a lot to the Denver Rescue Mission. And that's why when I was asked if I would come back here and tell my story and share part of my story this evening, I was honored. Because again, someone helped me, so maybe I can come back and do my part. I can never repay what God has done in my life, and I can never repay what the New Life program did in my life. All I can do is keep moving forward and keep doing what I do and try to help people along the way. And that's all I have to say.